Test, 1, 2, 3. Good afternoon. I'm Pastor Brooke. I'm the pastor here at Bear Creek, and it's great to have you here as we celebrate 96 years of Mona's life. So much of that was pure joy for so many of us. I was not able to know her for 96 years, but the times I got to know her were totally such a joy to be with her. And it's great to be able to host this in her church, Bear Creek United Methodist Church. She was a part of starting this church, founder of this church, and such a big presence for who we are still today. So we celebrate this chance for us to get together and to surround this family with love and peace and joy and memories. So hopefully you'll get a chance. We're going to have a time where we kind of open it up for memories. So if you have one, you got one kind of incubating, maybe bring that up and you can share that in just a little bit. But until then, let's open our hearts to the presence of God, that stream underneath everything that we are, that teaches us who we are and whose we are, that we're not alone. And so hear these words. Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and I am life. Those who trust in me, even though they die, yet shall they live, and whoever lives and trusts and believes in me shall never die. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. I died, and behold, I'm alive forevermore. And I hold the keys to life and death. Because I live, you live also." Friends, we have gathered here to praise God, to witness to our faith as we celebrate the life of Mona. We come together in grief, acknowledging our human loss. We're going to miss her. Had her 96 years, but it'll be good to lift her back up to God, but we're going to miss her. And so we ask that God, this presence, this love, this river of love, grant us grace that in our pain we can find some comfort, in sorrow, some hope, and in this death, resurrection for not only Mona, but us as well. Let us sing together beautiful hymn, "Morning is Broken." I'm going to invite you to stand for this.
Sweet the rains do fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where God's feet pass.
you bow with me? Pray. Gracious God, we pray now. We bow our heads and bend our knees to a greater reality than we are. We need your grace. We need your mercy in these times. We need to know that you are present and walking with us. Touch our hearts this afternoon. Help us bind closer together as we sing these songs and hear memories of Mona. We give you thanks for her great life. And as we prepare to celebrate it with all of our hearts, be with us in those moments of tears. Be with us in those moments of laughter, and help us to see both the tears and the laughter as a part of who she is, as a gift from her spirit, your spirit. Mourning is broken. May you continue to heal us and give us hope. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Please be seated. Turn to Scripture as we often do as a community in times of difficulty, in times of celebration. We turn to the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, the psalmist writes and sings. I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And then from the Gospel of Luke, the 3rd chapter, verses 10 and 11. And the crowds asked him, what then should we do? And in reply he said to them, whoever has 2 coats must share with anyone who has none, and whoever has food must do likewise. When I was a little guy, about 2nd grade, I had a really good friend, Laura. And we had a special place where we liked to hide from chores and from moms and dads, and it was a cedar tree behind our house. And we used to climb up into that cedar tree and just kind of hang out. It was beautiful up there. And I remember one snowstorm. I lived in South Dakota. It was a big snowstorm. The wind was going. There was no school. Mom had a list of chores this long for me, and I got Laura, and we ran up that tree, and we climbed it. It was so cool in there because the birds were hiding in there too, sheltering, right? And so we were like a foot away from these beautiful birds. And then all of a sudden, Laura broke that holy moment and took off her hair and shared with me that she had leukemia and had cancer and that she was going through treatments and had lost her hair. It was such a beautiful moment, but also a moment where, I remember holding her hand. I remember her crying. I remember us even praying in 2nd grade, if you can imagine that. We did. And that spring, she died. And it blew me away. I remember one of the only 2nd graders at the funeral. And afterwards, I just couldn't handle it. And so I went to my safe place, that tree. And I climbed all the way up that safe place, that tree, and I thought I was going to find peace. The opposite. I missed Lori. I felt overwhelmed. The wind was blowing. I just almost started to lose it when all of a sudden I heard something, and I looked down, and there was my mother climbing the tree to be with me. And as soon as she touched my shoulder, I knew I could get through it. I bawled my eyes out, but I knew I could get through it. We're celebrating a mom like that today, a grandma like that. We're celebrating that mother presence in our lives. And I want us to do that with all of our hearts. Mona was a great mother figure, and not just for her family, according to Moniece and others. I mean, she had a way of listening. You know, moms do two things, I think, well. They listen to their children. They listen to them. You know, they can hear them a mile away. And the second thing they do, and at least Mona did, as a faithful mom, a person of faith, she listened to God. She did both of those things. And from my understanding, is Mona kind of took in quite a few of this, not only this congregation, but neighbors and a lot of Monice's friends, Michael's friends, and really kind of brought them into this family, right? She was a mother figure to them, a fantastic listener. And she listened to God, too. She was a person of faith. She was a huge part of the grounding of this church. I was just listening to someone who was coming in today and remembered her, and she said Mona was the reason she came back a second time to this church. And the reason was because the first time she came, and then the second time, Mona remembered her name. And that made all the difference in the world. That's kind of the way Mona was. As soon as we heard that Mona had passed away, I got text after text after text of youth, kids who had been youth in our church that remembered Mona and the presence she was here in this community. So I want to thank this family for Mona's gift to our church, because she has been so much of who we are, and continues to speak to us. Her spirit is here. But she wasn't. Her trust in God. I want to just share a little bit about that in talking to her. She believed in all her heart that God loved her. But she didn't believe with all her heart that everything was going to be good, that it was all going to work out. She knew better. She'd gone through times. She'd been with people who'd gone through difficult things. But she believed with all of her heart that God's unconditional, relentless, and persistent love would eventually break through all the barriers and come to be with her. There's a beautiful story by Leslie Weatherhead in one of his books called The Will of God. And he talks about being a kid, and it was a muddy day, a rainy day. He must have lived in the Pacific Northwest. And he loved to go out in the muddy roads and play. And he would, there would be these little rivulets of water, and he would try to dam them up, and build and shake. But he always tried to dam these rivers up, and he loved to watch how that water would keep coming and eventually find a new way around. And Leslie Weatherhead tells us that that's the way life is. God is that river. There are barriers that keep coming up. Yeah, sometimes it's us, sometimes it's other people, sometimes it's nature. Whatever it is, there are barriers that prevent that love from coming to us at that very moment. But eventually, God's love and will keeps working to get around and come to us. And I believe with all my heart today, that's why we're celebrating this day. Mona is receiving that river of love right now, experiencing that amazing peace of knowing that she is loved and always will be. And so I'm going to turn it now over to Michael, and Michael's going to share a little bit about his mother, and then Moniece will share, and then we'll open it up to people from this community, our community, larger group community, not just Bear Creek. That's what I'm trying to say. Come on up, Michael. Sure.
Can you hear me? You hear me? So I'm going to attempt to take 96 years of Mona's life and present it to you today in Cliff Notes version. But before I start that, I want you to know that sometimes when Mona would introduce me to someone, she'd look at me and she'd say, "This is my firstborn." And I would reply, "This is my first mom." Humor was a very important part of who she was. And so today what I'm going to attempt to do is to put a little bit of her humor in what I'm going to tell you. And it makes you laugh. That's the way you would want it. So, Mona was born into humble surroundings on August 14th in 1926 in Twig Township in southern Illinois. Her parents lived in a small cabin, no indoor plumbing, no electricity. Her father, Sherman, worked for the oil and coal companies as a day laborer, and her mom, Vakel, was only 17 when Mona was born at Sherman, so she took care of the cabin and baby Mona. When Mona started her grade school adventure, she went to a one-room schoolhouse, and it was called Barefoot School. If you saw pictures of the kids in that school, well, some of them did have shoes, but a lot of them didn't, so it was aptly named. The family eventually moved to a better house where they actually had running water and electricity and a nice privy out back. She then went to a two-room schoolhouse, and then I think she enjoyed that a little bit more. Somewhere in that time frame, she decided to start calling herself Ramona. Now, she was born Mona Jean, but she decided to call herself Ramona. We don't know why, but this began her adventure as Ramona Jean Hicks, and what an adventure it would be. Many of her classmates ended their education at the 8th grade, but she wanted to go to high school, so she moved into the town of McLeansboro, which wasn't too much bigger than the place she started from, so she could go to school, and she lived with a cousin there. And when she graduated from high school in 1944, World War II was still raging. With his desire to be more than just a person who lived in a small town, she decided to move to St. Louis. And this began her adventure, her big city adventure. Now, we don't know exactly what happened in that time frame. She doesn't talk about it too much. But we do know that what happens in St. Louis stays in St. Louis. In the winter of 1947, she was introduced to a young sailor who was home on leave named Mel Charlton. And I think they hit it off very well. In February of 47, just a few months later, they got married. He then whisked her off to San Diego, where she began her adventure as the wife of a Navy sailor. Their life in San Diego was enjoyable, but somewhat brief, because Mel's squadron was ordered to deploy aboard the brand new aircraft carrier, the USS Valley Forge, which you've never heard of because it didn't last very long. It was brand new, but anyway, this was America's way of taking Teddy Roosevelt's quote of walk softly and carry a big stick. They went on a round-the-world cruise, which took a while. When they returned, they came into New York City. They docked there, and Mel took 30 days leave. He quickly made his way back to McLeansboro, where Mona had been staying, and took her back to San Diego. And I am certain, absolutely certain, that this was a very happy reunion for them. I was born 9 months later. Now they're living in San Diego. They lived on basically on Coronado Island, which is in the middle of San Diego Bay. And Mom often talked about how enjoyable it was to push me in a stroller down Orange Avenue, going down to the Del Coronado Hotel and sitting on the beach, being in the sunshine. She loved it. However, that was interrupted. In 1950, if you remember your history, Korea was in full swing. The war in Korea was in full swing, and Mel was transferred to a squadron that was forward deployed to Hawaii. Wow, nice, Hawaii, right? Well, after he left, Mona could accompany him, so she packed up all her stuff and got it shipped to Hawaii. And she got in the car and drove to San Francisco, and we got on a troop ship headed for Hawaii. And you would think that would be nice, except it was stormy the whole way, so Mona never got her sea legs the whole time, and she was sick the entire time, poor thing. I don't remember that, but there was a picture out there of when we first landed in Hawaii. And if you look at it, Mel and Mona were very happy. I looked like I needed a beer. I'm not sure. So the place that we landed there was on Ford Island. And Ford Island is in the middle of Pearl Harbor. We were given government quarters there, and the adventure that Mona had hoped for, that adventure in paradise, didn't quite happen the way she wanted, because Mel was almost immediately deployed further north into Japan. He flew out of there in support of the Korean War, and then he would be gone for several months, and he would come back, and then he would leave again. So this pattern continued for about 2 years. When his tour was over, they got orders to Pensacola, Florida. Could have sent us further, I guess. Again, everything got packed up and shipped, and we flew back to the U.S., and then they drove back to McLeansboro, where my parents left me with my grandparents, who had never seen me. And Mona and Mel went off to find a house down in Pensacola. And their time there was very, very productive. And Monique was born 9 months later. Inspired by her baby girl, Mona began to sew a lot. I think she made every outfit that Monique wore as a baby up till maybe she was, 30. But she made a lot of clothes for Monique. She made a lot of dresses for herself, and she made a lot of other things, shirts for me and clothes for anybody nearby. She just loved sewing. A few years after they were there in Pensacola, Mel got the chance to go to advanced electronics training in Millington, Tennessee. So they packed up everything again and moved to Millington. Took him about a year to finish his training. But while they were there, Mona took up ceramics. If there was a mold, Mona used it. Sometimes she made several of the same thing and just painted each one differently. That really got her creative juices flowing, I'll tell you. That and her sewing, she just kept at it. After his training was over, Mel got transferred to Moffett Field near Sunnyvale, California. They bought a house, and during our time there, Mel was deployed 2 times in 3 years. Mom did her best while Dad was away, but I know it wasn't easy for her. She remained strong as she could, but she would read us Dad's letters, and sometimes she would start to cry midstream. So we knew it was hard, but she carried on. In 1960, Mel got transferred again, this time to NAF China Lake in the middle of the Mojave Desert, Navy station in the middle of the desert. I just want you to know there's no lake, just a lot of sand, everywhere sand. But they made their way down there. Mona continued her passion for ceramics. She got very active in the PTA. She continued her sewing, and she became a great hostess, as some of the pictures out there will show you, both at our house and at the Chiefs Club. In 1963, Mel decided to retire from the Navy after 20 years. I think he'd had enough. He picked February 15th as his retirement date, which was their anniversary. He wasn't the least bit romantic, by the way. At that point, we packed up everything, hopefully for the last time, and moved back to Sunnyvale, where Mona began her new adventure as a civilian. But that was not enough for this high-energy woman, so she decided to become a hairdresser. She enrolled in a cosmetology school and began her new career in I think it was about 66 or somewhere in there. This turned out to be a great adventure for her. She just absolutely loved what she did. She worked for 2 women who were from Spain, Marisol and Felice, yes. And their energy matched Mona's. And so you can imagine, if you know Mona, you know how much energy she had. And you triple that, it's a party every day. So she had a good time with that. She continued to support Monique and I whatever we were involved in. And then in 1970, I decided to join the Navy and was assigned to a helicopter squadron in San Diego. I was deployed on 3 different ships, in 71, again in 72, and again in 73. And this was all in support of whatever we were doing in Vietnam. I know she worried, but the letters she wrote were always supportive and always reflected her understanding and concern for my safety. In 1976, Mona began her next adventure as a mother-in-law when Moniz and I both got married, same year. Not sure how that happened. We didn't plan it, it just happened. Grandmotherhood soon followed, and eventually there would be 4 grandsons and 1 granddaughter. In the mid-'80s, Mel decided after 22 years in an electronics company that he should retire again. This started another adventure, retirement. With Mel at home all the time, Mona would often say, "I married Mel for life, but not for lunch." After a few years, with Moniz and I both choosing to live in this area, Mona and Mel decided to sell their house in California and move here. And they came here in 1988. They selected a home site and a plan that would be their self-described dream home. Brand new home, all new furniture, big lawn, family close by. And they were truly happy. But in 97, Mel unexpectedly died. This was a tough time for Mona. The adventure as a widow was not what she wanted, but the love and support she received from family, from neighbors, from members of this church really helped normalize her new life. Along the way, she got involved with the local Glean group, which would give her the opportunity to give back to the community and add to her extended family. And speaking of family, in 2013, Mona acquired a new title, great-grandma. Nothing would give her energy quicker than a visit with her greats. There would be 4 of them, born in a 27-month period. Our 3 boys were very productive, indeed. A few years ago, when her health started to decline, both mentally and physically, Moniz and I helped her make the difficult decision to sell her car and her home and move into assisted living. Hard. This turned out to be the most challenging adventure for Mona, but absolutely the right decision. She often lamented, and if you've heard this, she often lamented that she would be happy if she could just get in her car, drive down the Safeway, and get a quart of milk. But that just wasn't going to happen. The car was gone. We heard this a lot. Over the next few years, she went into the hospital 4 or 5 times, and she always overcame whatever ailment put her there. She was tough, but her pain continued to plague her. Her general health declined, and her dementia got worse. Through all of this, she remained hopeful that she would get better. Her last fight was with COVID. She beat it, but it left her extremely weak. When I told one of my sons that she beat COVID, he said, "Of course she did. She's immortal." But on the 30th, she passed away. No more pain, no more confusion, and now a final adventure, reunited with Mel.
Yeah, I knew that was going to be. So, Moniz, do you want to come up, or you want a minute? Okay, give it a shot. Should have went first.
I could just say what he said. Yeah, hi everybody. So great to see all these beautiful faces. A lot of people I haven't seen in a long time. It's really, really terrific. So I want to thank you all for joining us today and celebrate the long and full life that my brother described of my mom. And I have a special message for you. Listen closely. My mom was not perfect. And speaking for myself and the other moms out there, none of us are. And that's just fine. Hear me okay? I talked so much yesterday with my old friend Cheryl that I was afraid it was going to be hoarse today. But I think my voice came back. So here are a few tidbits. How many of you know that she got a tattoo at the age of 71? She loved to show it to everyone. She was really enamored with tats, as she called them. She was part of this special club. The last time she had one of an aid car come out, the gal came and was examining her, asking her some questions, taking her blood pressure, and she goes, hey, I like your tats, to the aide, and I thought, oh, Mom. It was just, and she goes, you do? Oh, I have one. Do you want to see it? It's a rosebud. It was right on her chest. So I thought that was, just amazing. And did you know she took her first trip abroad to Belgium to visit my cousin who was living there with Spencer in 2001? And what a big step for her, really getting out of her comfort zone. And she left her credit card at home, and there was a little problem with that because it was the Easter holiday, but we worked it out. But she loved to reminisce and talk about that trip and how fun it was for her to see another country. She'd been to Hawaii, of course, and Tijuana, does that count? But not abroad. And yet, can you believe, this is hard to believe because she was very active, never had a broken bone until she fractured her ankle at age 92 or maybe 93. And of course, when they asked her, she wanted a purple cast. And so when she had her birthday about a week later, I put that into the theme. I asked everyone out of solidarity for Mona's cast, and she was in a wheelchair. She didn't like that at all. She thought that was stupid. Everyone, please wear purple. And if we didn't wear purple, I had purple beads. So that worked out really well. But I can tell you what she was. And I will start with some of the messages I've received these past few weeks from friends and family. So these are quotes from other people. She was a beautiful lady. What a snazzy, delightful woman she was. I always enjoyed and loved being around her. She always treated me like a very special person. I will always remember her fondly for that, one of my cousins. She lived a long and good life. I always loved her, and she cracked me up. That was another one of my cousins. She was truly a class act. She was a dear and wonderful friend. Mona was the most glamorous, cheeky woman I ever met. Another cousin. Clearly, she was loved by many, and we can see that today. I thank you again for all being here. She was like a mother and a grandmother to us, and we will miss her dearly. She was a lively one. I can't remember who wrote that, but they obviously knew her quite well. Loved her sense of humor and graciousness. She was an amazing lady. Mona is such a character, a very special and unique woman. What a good life she lived. So from my perspective as her daughter, I would agree with all of the above. And I'd like to add a few more things. And I might repeat a little of what my brother said, but it's from my perspective as well. Her love and devotion was unwavering. She was the kind of person you could talk to about. She could talk about anything with. She was not easily shocked. And I tried. really hard shot. Friends and neighbors would seek her out to discuss issues they were having. She was a great listener. And she did so many things for me and had regrets later that she didn't do me any favors by letting me off easy when it came to homemaking skills. Her ex-husband, he knows. Okay, her desire to become a professional hairdresser was impressive. And I used to help her study for the chemistry and anatomy exams. We had little flashcards. That was really fun. I learned a little bit along the way, all of which I've forgotten. She worked very hard to become the salon manager in no time. And I was also her model/guinea pig for the latest styles and colors. One of their 16-year-olds had frosted hair cut in the newest shag. We collaborated on my wardrobe by looking at fashion magazines and shopping for patterns and fabrics to create unique looks for me, as my brother shared. She encouraged my artistic interest and was very creative herself. And we brought a few of her ceramic pieces that she especially was proud of that you can look at on the back table there. When I became a mom, I understood that huge, overwhelming love you have for your child. And I appreciated her even more after that. She and my dad were experienced grandparents with Michael's boys, but my kids benefited from my dad's retirement, which allowed more time to spend with them. Mona used to tell people, she asked me how much she could pay me to watch the kids. Needless to say, Mona loved her grandkids and especially her great-grandkids with all of her heart. She was passionate in her involvement with the building of Bear Creek United Methodist Church. She loved her church activities and the wonderful friendships she made, and she was so sad to miss out when it became physically difficult to attend services. And I want to thank all of you who stayed in touch with her. It meant so, so very much. And her other passion was theater, especially musicals. She went to matinees at the Fifth Avenue Theater with friends from church and was a 30-year season ticket holder at the Village Theater in Issaquah. And I thank each and every one of you that have contributed to that fundraising that I put together. It's just been so heartwarming to see the support there. And then she'll just love that. As the years went on, we experienced a kind of role reversal. She needed me to help her more, and she worried that I might find her a burden. But I always reassured her that it was my turn, my pleasure, especially because she'd taken care of me as a challenging child and hung in there with me through all my ups and downs, and there were lots of those. She was always there for me. She was a very special and close friend to me, and I will always be grateful for that. I'm at peace knowing that she no longer suffers, and I will miss her forever. Thank you.
Beautiful, Moniece, thank you. Now we're opening this up to others to share, and I think one of your friends was going to start, or maybe? Cheryl will start. Sorry, Cheryl. Can I bring it to you? Here, let me bring it. We should.
Mona and Mel as a child. Oh, I like this. I guess I'll go to the front. All right. My voice is much deeper than it was as a child. Okay. So I moved to the next door area of Mona and Mel in 1962. I look younger, I guess, than I am, but at any rate, that was bold. At any rate, Mona was like a second mother to me. She was the absolute wonderful woman that I could go to in my distress, because I had a lot of distress growing up, very dysfunctional family, and to be able to go next door and say, Mona, you know, they're rioting in Southern California. Are they going to come up to the Bay Area, and are we going to have to be scared? And she would, watering her lawn, she'd say, Cheryl, you don't have to worry about a thing as long as I'm your next door neighbor. I'd say, well, that's really helpful. What about my parents? But I took that to heart because Mona was that kind of person. She raised her kids to be that way too. Moniz was always very special, although a lot older than me. Not a lot, but a few years older. Mike was a lot older than me, but I always thought he was cute. At any rate, Mona was a very, very, very special person to me, and I really, really, really will miss her. I'm so sorry that I never got to see her prior to when she became ill, but Mona is everything that Mike and Moniz described. She is a very, very, very different person, and she is now up there with Mel, with my mother, with my father, and partying her heart out. I'm sure she's in charge of greeting. I'm sure of it. So thank you all for coming. I think this is really special to Moniz and to Mike and to all of the grandkids. But again, Mona was like my mother. I love her and I will miss her.
Others? You can stay where you're at or come up here.
I'm Steve Stroh. I was another founding member of this congregation. And Moniz didn't tell you the whole story about the tattoo. So shortly after Mel died, well, what do Methodists do after, the food starts flowing more than they can handle? So we were one of them. We were bringing a casserole or something over to Mona, and she greeted us at the door, and we handed over the food and said how sorry we were and how much we missed Mel, and she says, yeah, I'm gonna miss him too. Guess what? I got a tattoo. And she proceeds to pull down and show it off, and it's down here. And she says, Mel wouldn't let me get a tattoo, but now Mel can't say no. So at that point, I knew she was going to be okay. So since Moniz took part of the story, I'm going to tell another one, that Moniz and Mel were amazing members of this congregation. They just put themselves wholeheartedly, everything they had into this congregation. And Mel turned the catchphrase of Bear Creek to some of us, says, Bear Creek, we're a hugging place. And Mel would greet you with a full contact hug. Every Sunday that I came in the door, I got a hug from Mel. Now, Mona was a little slighter, so it wasn't quite as full contact, but boy, she could hug. My God, she could hug, both of them. So, and if memory serves, I'm a geek, so pardon this, there's a huge amount of plywood in this wall back here. It's called a rack wall. It's earthquake proofing, so the rest of the structure won't come down. It can't move. And before we sealed all this up, everybody got a marker, and everybody signed that rack wall. There are signatures of the entire congregation on that plywood behind the drywall. So she's permanently a part of this place.
If I'm not mistaken, we used to call, the church used to call her house Bear Creek, what was it, west or east, or was it? South, Bear Creek South, because they had so many meetings over there. So anybody else like to jump in?
I'm Michelle, and I used to attend this church, and I met Mona the first time at a retreat, and it was like one of those moments across a crowded room. We just had a soul connection, and she, just like Cheryl said, was like a mom to me. I just totally loved her. And I can tell you the story about the tattoo. because she went to get the tattoo with me. I was 40 at the time, and she was significantly older, as you heard. Anyway, that's just that young at heart. That's the Mona that I loved. Another funny story of her once is she said, "I've always wanted to have cleavage, and now that I have it, it's wrinkled." So there's Mona's sense of humor. Anyway, she's a part of my heart, my soul, and I'll miss her always.
As her pastor, she never did show that to me, that tattoo, I'll tell you that. Others? Sure.
Hello. My name is John, and I had the pleasure of meeting Mona in 2001. Michael mentioned this when he was talking about Mona's participation in a group that we call Good Neighbors Gleaners Association, and many of the members are here. Quick story, this is my grandson, Hunter, and when we moved out here, we left all our family in New Jersey. So when we came out here, we sort of adopted, the folks in the group and what have you. And Mona was a very strong part of that. Not only was she very giving and caring, but she also opened up her home. She would allow every Saturday morning, we would have our gleans done at her house, and I really look forward to doing that. Hunter used to join me. I have some pictures here. When he was 2 years old, and he remembers Mona, going to the house and taking care of our business there. Okay, every so often, Michael would show up, and he'd be there, and he'd be going, "Mom, you don't need that. Don't take that, Mom." So her kitchen was packed, right? But anyway, I did want to share one short story with you, and this was just recently, and it goes to how Mona's spirit lives on. A few weeks ago, I was contacted by one of the food banks that we donate to, and they were looking for some produce bags. We use a lot of produce bags in the activity that we're involved in. I said, "Well, I don't know, but we'll try to see if we can get you contact." Well, they followed up on it, and they couldn't find any. They called all the stores, and this is about beginning of December or so. Well, just last week, I was cleaning out my shop and my garage and stuff, and I came across a box. And sure enough, I have the picture of it here. Unfortunately, I can't show you. But the box was labeled as, let me bring it up here. It says, a big box, it says, "Case Bags, Mona's Clean." Okay, and this was just last week. I took that as a sign. I said, her giving continues, even though she's not with her but her soul is there. So I just wanted to share that with you because I thought, wow. Thank you very much. We love her and we miss her.
She also gave and was extremely interested in Tent City 4 when we started reaching out to Tent City 4. As you can imagine, her personality working with homeless folk was a great match, for sure. Others? Yeah.
This is Logan. This is Mona's third, right, great grandchild. And Logan had something she wanted to say.
Mona was a great person, and even though she's not with us, she's always in our hearts.
Now there's a mic drop. Thank you. Others? Yeah.
Hello, I'm Susie Monroe, and I'm part of the Glean group. And I joined, I don't know how many years ago, probably 20, and I don't remember when I met Mona. But I have found, in this group, I have found treasures on the way, and Mona was one of them. She was such a wonderful girl. She was. And one day I told her, "Mona, you remind me so much of my mom." And she's like, "And your mom is gone?" And I said, "Yes." And she's like, "Well, you come to me. Come here. Let me give you a hug." And she hugged me. And so every Saturday that I would go, because I would go to the Glean, not so much for the stuff, but to see Mona. and she would hug me. I didn't even know I was going to cry. But, I mean, I don't know her family. I don't know a lot about her. But she was always there, and she would always ask me about my family. What happened to your son? What happened to your daughter? What happened to your other son? And your other, she always knew. I told her once, and she knew. She knew where they were. She knew what they were growing to be. She saw them once in a while when they were with me, which was not very often. But she was always, she would tell me, and she would tell, come here, let me give you a hug. And she would hug me. And I would go those Saturdays to get that hug. And we would talk, and a lot of the stories that you guys said, she told me. And she told me she wanted to drive and go to Safeway. And then she started with bad pains, and I would take ointment because I'm Mexican and I love arnica. And I would take arnica to her, and she would tell me that ointment magic that you gave me, you know. And I love that lady so much. You guys were so lucky to have her in your lives. Really, really, she was set apart.
Well, I met Mona. My name is Lyda. I met Mona when my family moved here and I was in middle school. We didn't have the church building yet, so as Pastor Brooks said, a lot of activities were held at Mona's house, including Bible study. My dad was the pastor, and I went to Bible study every week, but I never went to the study. I just went to Mona's house, because I really liked just being around Mona. So she was also someone that would come up to me every Sunday, and she wouldn't greet me with just a hug, but I remember her cupping my face and then kissing each cheek. And I don't know that I would be welcoming of just anybody doing that, but with Mona, it was totally welcomed. But she would ask me every week how I was doing, and she knew I didn't really like it here very much. And she was like the safe person to just be honest with. And then came the day that I really wanted to get my eyebrow pierced. And I was the pastor's kid. I was jumping around from school to school. Probably wasn't going to be good for the image if I had an eyebrow ring. And I think Dad was just talking to Mona one day, either before Bible study or after, maybe even while I was at school. I don't know. But the short version is, he came home and he said, guess what? You're going to go get your eyebrow pierced for your 15th birthday. And I said, what? I had come up with all these different contracts. If I get straight A's, if I do this, if I do that, and I hadn't done any of those things. And he said, well, I was talking to Mona. Mona thinks you'd be with an eyebrow ring, so we're gonna go do it. And she's just always been the person that affirms me and meets me where I'm at, and then tells other people you can love her where she's at too. And that was Mona.
Amen. Awesome. I think we'll maybe leave there and then, or do you want, Denise, what do you think? Maybe have memories shared later during, yeah, okay. So we'll continue on with the service here. And now's a time for a special number. Remember, right? I think, is it Michael? Did I have it right? Oh, yeah, we'll have you share. Did you share Moonshadow already? No. Well, come on up and do that. I know it's not quite right, but it'll be the right spot for it.
Hello. For a little bit of context, I'm friends with Mona's grandson, Spencer. We met in high school, and I had many opportunities to have some great memories with Mona. So Moniece reached out and asked if I could do a Cat Stevens song, and I'm going to do my best. So here we go. I just restring this guitar. Right. I've been followed by a moon shadow, moon shadow, moon shadow. Leaping and hopping on a moon shadow, moon shadow, moon shadow. And if I ever lose my hand, lose my plow, lose my land, and if I ever lose my hands away, I won't have to work no more. Hi. Oh, wait. There it goes. Sorry. And if I, okay. And if I ever lose my eyes, if my colors all run dry, and if I ever lose my eyes away, I won't have to cry no more. I've been followed by a moon shadow, moon shadow, moon shadow. Leaping and hopping on a moon shadow, moon shadow, moon shadow. And if I ever lose my legs, yeah, I won't moan and I won't beg. And if I ever lose my legs away, I won't have to walk no more. And if I ever lose my mouth, all my teeth, north and south, and if I ever lose my mouth away, I won't have to talk. I've been followed by a moon shadow, moon shadow, moon shadow. Leaping and hopping on a moon shadow, moon shadow, moon shadow. Moon shadow, moon shadow. All right, thank you very much.
Well, as I send you out, we'll sing one more song as well. My mom is 93, so reminds me of Mona and of the situation she is. And she's always told me this story, and I relay it to her. She was a lover of Native American people, and she heard this from a Native American, a Dakota gal. And Lakota, Dakota, Nakota, the indigenous people in South Dakota use that language. And she tells her this story of a mother eagle and how she teaches her young how to fly. And the story goes that the eagle will take the eaglets just at the right time and fly as high as she possibly can. And as she gets high and she feels the wind gets safe enough, she'll just gently just kind of tilt her wings, and the little eaglets will fall into the sky. And if everything goes well, they'll start flapping their wings, and they'll start flying, and the mom will just fly right next to them, cheering them on. But if they get a little low and can't go very well, she'll go down there too and fly with them. But when they can no longer fly and get too tired, and they began to fall through the sky, does the mother eagle let them land on the ground cold and alone? No, the mother eagle swoops down in all of her mercy and grace and catches them and holds them in between her wings. I believe in a God who does not take, but a God who catches us. And I hope God can fly along with you and catch you in your low moments and encourage you. And may that mother spirit that may be a part of Mona be with you as well. And with that, may you go in peace. And let's stand together as we sing a hymn of promise, a beautiful hymn. encourage you to stay around. We have a beautiful catered meal here that you can kind of just grab and kind of mix around and talk. We have some places to sit. But thank you for coming and celebrating with us. And may you go knowing you are not alone, that Spirit of God is going to take your cheeks at some moment, look at you and say, you're great, you're doing super. So go with that Spirit. And all the people said, amen. Thanks for coming.